So this book is called Julia's Voyage. I wanted to make up a name. My middle name is Judith, and I don't know, somehow I got to Julia. And obviously it's written by me, but also illustrated by Fiona Fontaine. She's a social worker. She was a social work student at the time here, and so she offered to do this and very kindly did it. Okay, so next page, it's the same stuff, but it also says, during World War II, many children were evacuated by boat from places in Europe to safety in North America, and other places, Australia, all over the place. This is the story of one little girl who had come over to America when she was less than 2 years old. And that was me. So, next page is sitting in front of the fireplace. Julia was excited and scared to hear that she would soon be going home with her sister to meet their parents. The war was over and she was in America while her mother and father lived in England. She'd seen their photos and written letters to them in rabbit language on the notepaper she got for Christmas. I didn't really know how to write anything but rabbit language. But that was nothing like going on a long, long trip to meet them and never coming back to the only home she had known. Next page. The grown-ups kept talking about how different life would be in England. There were shortages of food. Auntie is what we call the woman who took care of us. Auntie had bought them thick undershirts to wear against their skin in the cold, damp weather. Julia asked her sister Sarah if she was scared about the trip. Of course not, the 9-year-old said. They want us back and will take care of us. Julia would miss her sort of little sister Anne, or maybe not, when she remembered the time a bee came and stung the little girl in her playpen. Everyone said it was Julia's fault. She would definitely miss the back porch, though. For years she had jumped off it every day. She thought if she did it just right, she'd be able to fly. The trip began with an overnight train ride to Canada. They got on after lunch, and Julia watched all afternoon as farms and towns flew by. There were lots of people inside the train to watch as well, as she sat tightly with Auntie and her sister. She had a new picture book to look at too, but mostly didn't open it. Of course, it was trains. There weren't planes then. Or there were army planes, but there weren't planes for people to look at, to go on. I mean, at 6:30 it was their turn to go to the dining car for supper. This was fun because she could eat whatever she wanted. Julia tried but couldn't read the menu. Sarah helped her order a hamburger and an ice cream sundae. Auntie urged glasses of milk too. Aren't there cows in England? Julia asked. Auntie replied, yes, but you may not get as much as you do here, and you know that. And then her sister interrupts, yes, growing girls need milk, especially 6-year-olds. True, Auntie said, but you need it too, Sarah. So my sister was quite opinionated about things. Julia was quiet and sad for a while, but then it was time to have their seats made into bunks by the friendly conductor. They changed, well, you can see how that was. They changed into their pajamas and brushed their teeth. Finally, it was time to climb up in the top bunk where the two girls would sleep head to foot in the swift-moving train, and they knew Auntie would be right below in the bottom bunk. Up above, Sarah whispered, it's going to be like losing our mother tomorrow. Julia quickly answered, yes, and I know I'll cry. That's okay, her big sister replied. We probably all will, but go to sleep now, and no kicking. Julia hugged her teddy and thought to herself, I bet I'd never go to sleep, never, never, never. And then she did. In the morning, the train came to life like a hotel on wheels. People got up and went to use the bathrooms. Conductors announced that the train would be in Quebec in an hour and a half. Overnight cases were repacked, and while people ate breakfast, the bunks were changed back into seats by the conductors. That was very fascinating for us that they could do all that. At breakfast, Auntie suggested eggs and bacon because they may be hard to get in England, but then she let them pick pancakes and syrup instead. As another treat, they were allowed to have orange juice as well as milk. Sarah said she wished she could try coffee, but was firmly told she was too young for that. She always wanted coffee. After the meal, Auntie began telling them more about the trip, or maybe Julia began, or was listening more carefully now. You're going on a ship from Quebec with a lot of American and British soldiers, as well as 50 evacuated children. They will, like you, be going back now the war in Europe is over. You'll be staying together in a dormitory. What's that? Asked Julia. It's a place where lots of children live together and sleep in rows, said Sarah, reader of many stories. Yes, Auntie added, and 15 of you will be looked after by Miss Carpenter. I want you to do what she tells you. Okay. Whether or not you find her to be nice, Auntie added, just help her out by being well behaved. And Sarah, I expect you to keep an eye out for your sister, too. Okay, Sarah replied, but tell her to cooperate. It was all beginning to sound glum, Julia thought. How long will it take to get there, Auntie? 5 days, and it's going to be Sarah's birthday on the day before you arrive. Okay, so now we back to the front for the boat one. The train came to the station and most people got off. In other words, they were all going for this ride. Julia held Auntie's hand as they walked to a bus for a brief ride. Soon the huge ship came into sight, and Julia both felt excited but also worried about leaving Auntie soon. Auntie was allowed to come on board with them, and they checked in. Sarah wanted to keep her passport with her, but Auntie said it would be better for Miss Carpenter to keep it safe. Soon it was time to walk up the big gangplank to a high deck in the ship where they were greeted by friendly young sailors. What room will you two lovely girls be staying in? Said one with a wink. Sarah answered, C10. All right then, walk straight ahead in those double doors and down the stairs to your left. Then it will be the third door on the right. Thank you, sir, said a tired-sounding Auntie. It was very hard for her also. Once they reached C10, they noticed bunks and lockers. Sarah rushed in and picked 2 bunks for them right near a porthole. Julia eagerly followed. Then Miss Carpenter arrived with her suitcase. She was tall and pretty. Clapping her hands, she said, "Welcome, girls. I will be your caretaker during this trip, and I'm sure we will all get along just fine. Please choose your bed and put your things in a locker. Then would you and the person who brought you please go up to B deck." With that, she swept out of the room. Up on B deck, the line slowly moved to a table where Miss Carpenter was sitting with a sailor. Julia held tightly to Auntie's hand. She wished the line would never end. Once, though, they followed the others over to the railings near one of the gangplanks. Now Julia burst into tears. For as long as she could remember, Auntie had seemed like her mother. She felt so mixed up and sad as Auntie hugged and kissed her and Sarah. Then Auntie said with one more kiss for each of them that it was time for her to go, and she walked down and away. And as she walked down and away, they continued to watch and wave until she was completely out of sight. That was sad. The first night in the strange room without Auntie, it was hard to sleep. After that, the trip gradually became better. Julia learned to have fun with other children. They raced up and down corridors and staircases, playing tag or hide and seek, free as the gulls. They made friends with soldiers who were willing to play. A soldier named Bill showed Julia, who had never been allowed to have soda pop, how you could have a couple of sips, put the lid on, and shake the bottle until it almost exploded in your face. This worked until Sarah came along and reminded Julia she had only clothes for 5 days. On the third night, Julia remembered that her sister's 10th birthday was coming and went to tell Miss Carpenter. But Auntie had already told her Miss Carpenter said a cake had been ordered and all their friends could come to the party up on the deck for Sarah at 4 p.m. Wow! And the next one is the party. In the afternoon of Sarah's birthday, she and Julia ran up on deck at 4 o'clock. They found some of the girls from their dormitory, a few of their brothers, and lots of soldiers and sailors in a big circle. They all began clapping and singing happy birthday as Sarah arrived with a big excited smile on her face. Then there was blindfolds and pin the tail on the donkey and racing down the wide deck. There were lots of food, including the big cake, with icing, little paper cups of ice cream, lollipops, and glass bottles of soda for everyone. When the party became loud and lively, all Miss Carpenter said was, "Please don't run with glass bottles because you could cut yourself." She didn't want to stop any of the fun. Next morning, Miss Carpenter said that they would reach England right after lunch and to pack their suitcases before they went on deck. As they packed, Sarah pulled out the photo of their parents standing in an archway, which they had always kept in their bedroom. She said, "Let's look at this carefully, just in case we don't recognize them." Julia began to be worried. What if we can't find them? What if they're late or don't come to meet us? "They will, silly," Sarah said. Even before noon, they began to see land. It was so exciting that Julia didn't want to go to lunch. But Sarah said, "We better fill up. Remember, there isn't much food in England." After a quick cheese sandwich and an apple, they were back on deck, leaning on the chest-high railing and watching the crowd of tiny people grow bigger every moment. Then it started to rain. That reminded them that it rained a lot in England. The sisters ran down to get their raincoats. At last, the huge ship came up near the shore, and gangplanks began to move out, like long arms from various parts of the ship. The sisters were looking as hard as they could and checking their photo every now and then, but they couldn't find those important faces anywhere. Julia started waving just in case, which her sister first thought was silly, but soon she was waving too. And Miss Carpenter was close by, keeping an eye on her girls. Finally, it was time to go down the gangplank. Sarah led the way and held Julia's hand. Julia was excited, scared, and looking everywhere. Suddenly they were at the bottom, and two people who looked just like the picture were hugging them and saying, "My darlings, welcome home." All around Julia, others were hugging and crying in the magical reunion crowd. Julia felt shy for a moment, but then everyone started talking at once. She noticed that they talked a little differently, and her parents were smiling at her American accent. Soon their daddy led them over to get their bags and join another line so that they could be checked to leave. When they were out of the big hall, their mother said, "We're going to take you to a hotel for dinner before we catch the train to London where we live." "Oh, so there's still hotels?" Julia asked, thinking of eating breadcrumbs on the sidewalk as she had been imagining. "Of course there are, dear," her father added. "The war is over and things are improved a lot here." The train was quite full. A friendly man sat across from them in the compartment and did tricks for the girls. He made it look as if he cut his finger or hand off, hid it up his jacket sleeve, and pulled it right back on. When he stopped doing this, Julia sat by her mother and who put an arm around her, and she experienced for the first time she could remember leaning sleepily on her soft bosom. It was dark when they got to London. They took a taxi to their apartment building. There was an elevator with metal gates to take them upstairs. When they were shown the toilet, a separate room from the bathroom and sink, there was a long metal chain coming down from near the ceiling which had to be pulled to flush the toilet. Julia wasn't sure she could reach it to do it alone. Their bedroom had tall windows with curtains that looked like a patchwork quilt. Their mother explained that she had made them from pieces of old garments because cloth was not easy to buy during the war. Their room had 2 single beds, 2 chests of drawers, and a bookcase, all newly painted bright green. And particularly exciting, many books were on the shelves, including picture books for Julia to look at. She immediately decided that her parents must love reading just like her sister did. Sarah picked out a new book and went to the kitchen with it. It had been a long, exciting day. Julia could hardly keep her eyes open. Her new real mother helped her get into her pajamas and brush her teeth, and then read her some silly poems. When she turned out the light and closed the door, Julia began to cry. Of course, her mother came right back in to hug her. A plan was soon made for her daddy to bring a lamp and a chair and do his work close by so Julia could fall asleep. This was cheerfully repeated for many months until Julia began to grow out of her ghost trouble. By then, as a 7-year-old, she had adjusted to being an English girl who used to live in America. It's going to work out later. So that's the end of it.